So my name is Jörg Colberg, and there's a new dummy award here at Cortona on the Move, and I was asked to be the juror of that award, and I wanted to talk about the general idea of the award and give you some of my thoughts, how I did it, and some of my thinking about photobooks. And then I want to show you the shortlisted books, and you will actually see them on the screen up there. That's why we did this whole production here. Because otherwise, how else would you see them? It's not ideal, but it will give you, I think, a good idea of what the books look like. And then I'm also going to announce a winner, because of course every award needs to have a winner. And there's a winner here. So if you don't know what a dummy is, what is this feedback? A dummy is a prototype of a book. Sometimes people call it a maquette. But it's basically an unpublished book that looks very close to what the published book would look like. That's the idea. And the book can be published by a commercial publisher. There are a lot of commercial publishers you might have heard of. There's a little bookshop downstairs, and you can find books by RM or Nazraeli Press. I think there's some Untitled books, Aperture. Those are commercial publishers. But also recently, self-publishing has become very popular in the world of photography, meaning that a photographer would do all the things that a publisher does, and produce their own book commercially and sell it themselves. So usually when people do this, they don't really understand, because they don't know all the things that a publisher does. But it works out quite well for some people and not so well for other people. But so the first thing I wanted to say, and I don't know whether you know this, but the reality of photobooks is photobooks are very popular right now. But it's very, very hard to sell a whole edition of a photo book. There are a lot of books, and actually not that many people buying them. So, if you want to do something really good for the world of photography, everybody should buy one book during the fair, because it will make the photographers happy, it will make the publishers happy, and it actually helps sustain this very vital part of photography. So how do you do this? How do you judge a competition like this? I've been reviewing photo books on my website for a while now. And there are a lot of aspects that are important for me when I look at a photo book. Of course, these aspects are subjective, some of them anyway, some of them are not. Some of them I talk to a lot of other people, publishers, critics, writers, photographers, and there's some agreement about other aspects. But I thought there needs to be a rhyme or reason behind judging and reviewing a book. You can say this is a good book, and then you can say why it's good. But I think there are general criteria that that matter for a photo book, and we might not be in agreement about all of the criteria, but I wanted to tell you what I used so you have an idea of what I did. So when I look at a book, this is just one of the examples, and I'll show you the book. Can you see this okay? Yeah. Oh, okay. So when I look at a book like this, for me, I'm German, right? So everything has to have numbers and rules and everything. So the photography is important, and that's really the most important aspect. So 35%, I have ratings from 1 to 5. So it's like when you go to Amazon, there's like 5 stars or something. So the 3, an average book is a 3. I don't believe in this thing that everything is a 5. Like a 5 would be something very, very good, and a 1 would be something very, very bad, and something that's okay and good and average. So every book, so if you look at the distribution, the medium should be around 3, right? Because I believe that there should be space for the really good stuff and the really bad stuff. So the photography for me is roughly 35% of that, because if you want to make a good photo book, for me you have to have good photographs. I've seen a lot of books that are really cool and really interesting, and then usually when I think, oh, this is really nice, I want this, I always ask myself, will I look at this again? Am I going to look at this a second time, a third time? And oftentimes I decide, well, this is really cool, but I'm not going to look at that again. I mean, how many photographs of ashtrays can you look at 20 times? You're not going to do that, right? I mean, it's just an example. If anybody did a project about this, I apologize. So then the second aspect for me to look at a book is the concept. It's 25%. By the concept I mean is, how is the photography translated into this book? And by this book, I mean just take this as an example, what are the decisions that went into the making of this book? The sizes, the way the images are presented, the use of text, the role of the design, all these things. How does it come together? How did they think that, you know, if you look at these pictures on the wall, it looks very different, and you might have seen a lot of these exhibitions, so you see you know, how people put things on a wall, and it's, you know, it's in this mostly photojournalistic context. It's oftentimes with like a picture, and then underneath is the caption. You know, so there's like a very specific way, and there's all kinds of ways to hang pictures on the wall, and then you have to translate that into a book. But a book is a different beast, you know, because you have a different engagement. It's a smaller object. I mean, this is like, you look at this, you know, close up, you hold it in your hands. It's almost a little intimate because it's so small. It's different than standing in front of a wall where you look at this with maybe 20 other people and then they walk in front of you and you're really annoyed, right? It's like a very different thing of looking at pictures on a wall than in a book. So this translation into the photographs into this object, because this is an object, every book is an object, that's very important. That's 25%. With books, you probably have run into this problem before. You sometimes get a book and then you start looking, and after a while you're like, oh my God, how many more? And you like start turning the pages faster and faster and faster, and there are just too many pictures. So that aspect of like, are there enough pictures or are there too many pictures is important, but not that important, but it's usually like 15%. So if a book has too many pictures or too few pictures, usually it's too many, because photographers can't help themselves. They always want more and more and more. Then that's going to get a worse rating, because I really don't like books that have too many pictures. The number of pictures has to really fit the book. If you make a book 1,000 ashtrays, okay, then there should be 1,000 pictures of ashtrays in it. Otherwise, nobody wants to look at 1,000 pictures of ashtrays or whatever it is, right? So you have to find the right balance. And then the last aspect that I look at, usually when I review books that are already produced, is the production, meaning the materials. How is this made? Is it printed well? Does it look good? You know, can I turn the pages easily? It's kind of this thing, because it's an object, you know, what does it feel like? Is it nice or is it not nice? And I've seen this probably too. There are a lot of books that are really nice and you think, ooh, I want this. And then there are books when you touch them, you're like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right, and or this looks shitty, and I can't see, you know, the printing is bad, you can't see anything in the shadows. I didn't do that here because it's a dummy award, and these books aren't really produced commercially. So they're not necessarily, I don't want to make the assumption that all these books look exactly the way they would look if they were produced already. So what I did instead is I was thinking, okay, if I were a publisher, which I'm not, but I'm kind of acting as the peon or the henchman of the publisher here, because the final book will be published. I thought, okay, so one question that every publisher asks is like, does this book actually have to be made? Like, do we need this book? Do I need this book as a publisher? Does this fit with what we do? But also, are there other books like this already? Do we need another book about ashtrays? And there are already 10. You know, I mean, it's just a stupid example, right? So I decided the need of the book would be 25% too. Because some topics, they're valid, and this is not to say that they're not valid, but it just means you might not need another book about a topic where there already are 20 other books. And I think this should be important when you judge a competition about dummies. I'm sorry, I have my timer here. It's working. All right. So those are the aspects that's how I did this. So for all the books, I actually went through and I did all the numbers, right? So every book got a rating. Okay, so this is then I whittled it down to sort of like a smaller set. I ended up with, I think, not quite 10 books, and from them I picked, the winner was very obvious, another book was really obvious, and then I picked 3 other books that ended up in the shortlist, and the shortlist is 5 books. There are a lot of competitions, whether it's books or, I don't know, awards and all this kind of stuff, and what I'm seeing right now is that all these shortlists are really, really big. You know, you have a shortlist here that's 20 books, another shortlist there that's 40 books, and I don't really believe in that. I don't think a shortlist with 40 books or 20 books makes any sense. Because I get so many emails, I review books, I get so many emails about books that are shortlisted somewhere. It's almost like every book is on some shortlist somewhere. And if that's the case, that doesn't make any sense for me, because there should be, I believe, if it's on a shortlist, it should mean that it really is something that's good, you know, and you know, 20 books on it, you know, even if you look at a short list, you get an email and there are 20 books. Are you going to look at all of these books or like look them up? I mean, I don't know who has that time. With 5 books, it's different. You know, it's like the Oscars, right? There's only 5 or 6 movies nominated and one of them wins, right? And it makes a lot of sense. They don't nominate 40 movies because then the award ceremony would last 2 days, right? To see all the clips and all the actors and everybody, right? So that, you know, so that was the idea. Okay, so short list of 5. So there were some cases where the production was really nice, but the photography was really not that good. Didn't really pass that, like, would I look at this again test. So I had to, because I love objects, especially if they're handmade, so this is kind of like sterile and boring for me, but something like this is really exciting. But then I had to remind myself, okay, do I actually like the pictures? What I found is that dummies they're often handmade, and they're actually going to show you some handmade dummies here. But what I found is photographers often also get their books produced commercially for a dummy, and of course you can do that. You can go to a printer, have it printed, you can get it bound, and then you get a book that looks like a real, commercially produced book. But oftentimes, even though people pay a lot of money, oftentimes those kinds of books, they sort of lacked character. They felt plasticky or mass-produced, even though there might be only 1 or 2. So what I found is that, and I believe that you would probably agree if you had a chance to look at all of these dummies, like there's something about the handmade quality or like the production, the maker's hand that influenced how I looked at these books, which I thought was quite interesting. Now, what I'm hoping is that matters, because I said the production is for published books is important, because if you can make something commercially that looks very appealing and people just want to look at it and hold it and it smells nice and all these things, that really matters. So these are all things that photographers, I think, should think about when they publish a book. It shouldn't just be like, oh, I want a book, hey, here's my book. It should be like something that's really, really exciting and attractive to people. Attractive in the sense that people really want it in their house. Right? Because, you keep these things at your house, right? So you want to make something that people want to take home with them and look at again. So these kinds of considerations like design, production, materials are actually really important. And I'm saying this mostly for the photographers in the room, but some of you guys probably already know this. You have to think about all these aspects because they matter, There are a lot of photo books out there. I mean, there are not that many downstairs, but even if you start looking, there are enough books that if you don't have a lot of patience, then you're like, oh wait, what am I going to look at now? And then you might go by the one that has oh, this is an interesting cover, or this looks cool, So there's all these things. It's really, I don't have the time to talk about this, but as a photographer, you really want to be careful and think about this very carefully, which also means, since this is being recorded, I love to go on record. If you're a photographer, you should work with other people on your book. You should work with a designer. You should talk to people who know about production. If you don't know how about binding, you have to talk to a binder. Maybe even talk with an editor. Get input into your edit. Does this really work? If you have text in the book, talk to a writer. Making a book will cost money. Don't try to save money in the wrong spot, because once the book is made, you cannot unmake it. Of course, you can destroy it and make it again, but it's really expensive, right? But once it's out in the world, you can't just say, hey, give me back my book. This is crap. I don't want this anymore. I'm sorry that I did this bad job. That doesn't work, right? It's out in the world. That's it. It's kind of like a bad tweet, right? It gets retweeted and boom, you're known for being an asshole. You know what I'm saying? So you have to pay attention to all these aspects. It's really important. And I tried to pay attention to these aspects while I was jurying this award, because it really matters. I think I said this before. Obviously, my selections are subjective. There's a matter of taste in here. There's certain things I like that I don't like. Are these the best books of the selection? For me, they are. Your mileage might vary. Okay? It's criticism, reviewing. It is subjective. But I think I'm confident that I picked books where, I've already shown them to Ariana and Antonio, and I think, I'm confident that the selection will hold up. Just a few observations before I start showing you the books. So more than 1/3 of all the books that were submitted used archival materials in some form, meaning older photographs, postcards, documents. That's, I think, fairly new. And I'm tempted to almost blame Red-Headed Peckerwood, this book that Christian Patterson made. I like that book, but he used a lot of archival materials, and somehow this became a trend. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think if you're a photographer and you think, oh, I can have these cool old pictures, maybe you want to think about this again. Like, not everybody's doing it, but if like more than 1/3 of all people are doing that, then maybe this has become a little bit too trendy and people need to reconsider this a little bit. Roughly 20% of books had little inserts or pages were smaller. Again, Red-Headed Peckerwood, right? I blame Christian. Like, the problem with that is it becomes gimmicky if a lot of books do it. And the other problem is that if you go to a publisher and you try to do it, they'll say no, because it's expensive to do. Right? So if you're a photographer and you make a book and you want to have a book with a lot of small inserts, that's the problem if you go to a publisher, because that makes the book really expensive to make. So you want to think about this. Roughly 15%, which is not that much, but it's more than I expected. 15% of the submissions used vellum paper, you know, this see-through paper, something where you can see through. That's good too, but 15% also seems a lot. And I don't want to stereotype or make like a really stupid observation, but I think it is a little bit of an Italian thing. And I'm not saying it's bad, but still think about this carefully, because it has to make sense. And if it becomes more like a gimmick or a style, then I don't think it serves your book. If it makes sense for your book, that's great. But if you just do it because you like it or it makes it attractive, then don't do that. Okay, so now having said that, I have little notes here. So this is going to be interesting, because I thought I had 2 hands available. So we'll see how this goes. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to show you, I'm good at time. I'm going to show you the dummies that I selected. So this is the short list, which might or might not already have been announced. And so the first book I'm going to show you is this one here by an Italian photographer called Carla Rack. It's called Eyes as Oars. And I don't know how I'm going to do this right now, because I'm going to, okay, so I try to do it with one hand. Usually it's easier with 2 hands. So when you open this up, you see it's a hardcover book. You know, this is a tipped-in image. It's embossed, and then the image is tipped in, which is quite nice. There's already one problem with the book, is it doesn't have, I don't know, is this in focus when you see this? There's no, on the spine there's no information, which is like if you buy this book and you put it in your bookshelf and then you look for it, you will never find it, because there's no name on it, right? No name, no title. How are you going to find the book? Anyway, so I'm nitpicking already. So you open the book, and then this is what you see. Right, so this might or might not make sense to you. I don't know how many of you know Morse code. I do, but you might not. Okay, so and then you turn the page. I'm going to try not to go too slow and not too fast, and this is what you see. All right, so there's an image here, and you know this image is on top of another image. Turn the page again. Can you see this? Okay, does it work? Okay. Oh, that's, yes, that's a lot better. So then you get this landscape. It's okay. You know, it's going to be uncomfortable for you. I can do it. It's all right. Yeah. I'll do it. Don't worry. Thank you. I'm just going to feel bad for her holding the microphone for an hour. I'd rather feel bad for myself. I'm just kidding. Okay, and then you turn the page again, and here's the title page. So this is also something that I'm seeing a lot now, that people have like a few pictures, and then there's a title page. Right, so I don't know whether this is a trend. I think it's getting a little bit of a trend. It's okay. So when you see this, what you want to assume as the viewer is that this sort of gives you some short information. You know, you sometimes have that in movies. Something starts, blah, 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 and then titles start a little later, right? But this doesn't really give you all that much information other than the name of the photographer, and this is the title of the book. All right, so I don't know how many of you have a photojournalistic background, so this book might frustrate you a little bit or quite a bit, right? You know, I'm just, because, you know, I'm from a different background, sort of more an art background, and this is kind of the stuff that I'm used to, you know. I always get frustrated when there's a lot of text. Anyway, so there's a gatefold, the first thing you see. So this is called a gatefold, right, a fold-out page. And there's only one in the book, and I actually reviewing this book while I speak here, but why not? So this is probably something that you can lose, because this is just going to cost extra money and it doesn't really do anything. Also, this picture you will see comes a little later, right? But anyway, and then you turn the page, and then this idea you have seen before, with, you know, this landscape that you might or might know what it is, and on top you have an older picture. So you see this book mixes these, and then here's a picture of a planet. So this book mixes these different types of pictures, and clearly this has to mean something, right? You want to assume that somebody wants to tell you something. That's because it's a book, but the book doesn't really make it that clear. And I think you might find that confusing or irritating, but that's really the idea of this book. I mean, it's this idea of storytelling. There are a lot of different ways of telling a story. You can tell very specific stories. Let's say the story of a young woman who gets married and has a baby. That's a very specific story, and you can tell that with text if there's very specific things you want to talk about. But if you wanted to make a book about, let's say, a mystery or, I don't know, something poetic, then it's a very different story. So this book it's not necessarily poetic, but it works along the lines of, the imagination. It's really all about your imagination. What do you make of this when you look at this? And I don't know what you do, but you can see it in real time, so you can maybe have some ideas. And it's about these very disparate things, space travel or space exploration, and then these mystical creatures, right? And that somehow they are connected because we see them as connected in the book. So we want to assume that makes sense, right? Let me just see my timer here. All right. Okay, so you keep going, and by now the strategy of the book is pretty clear. I mean, it kind of repeats the same idea. There's no surprises. You know the types of images. They're different images, and the way they're presented remains the same, right? Which is good for a book, because now you see there's a bookmark in it, which is nice. Of course, your publisher will also say, well, this costs extra, so maybe we won't do that, right? And then you see there's like you can actually read this, the Martians are coming. So this is about Mars, this is H.G. Wells' story. Somehow, but then this is not really about Mars, right? So there's something going on here. And I actually enjoyed the way how this was presented. I mean, I have a background in astronomy. I actually have a PhD in astrophysics. So I know all these pictures and I know what they mean. And it's kind of, all right. But the way that they're mixing these astronomical scientific images with images that are medieval or fantastical, or it sort of mixes two things that for me really don't belong together, and that makes it really interesting because we understand science, or I think we do anyway. These machines make these kinds of pictures here. That's not the machine that made that picture, but and so we believe in those pictures. But at some time in the lifetime of our universe, people believed in this is the same map that I showed before here, and this is like an example of the little pages, right, that you don't need. There's only 2 of these, so you can just forget about them. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's a little gimmicky. You don't need this. But at some stage, people made these kinds of pictures, or people believed that this would actually say something, right? So it's also a book about like what we believe in and how we're going to try to make sense of the world, of what's around us. What is this, universe, right? This is an actual photograph of the Milky Way taken from outside the Milky Way. I apologize for the bad joke. Anyway, okay, so this is the book basically. So it goes through all these, you see this is the Mars rover and then this fantastical creature on top. I want to, you don't, and I mean it's really obvious, but you don't necessarily have to like all these books. I'm not saying this is the best book, or so you have to just make up your own mind. This is the beauty of photo books, that it's something that's given to you and you make up your mind and then you like it or you don't like it. But something I think it's really important, when you see a book and you have this reaction, oh, I don't like this, or I like this, think about this a little bit. What is it that I like, or what is it that I don't like? And then, because you can actually really learn something, like, what is it that I don't like about this? Like, why do I feel the need that I have text here? Or like, why should there be text? I really want some text that tells me what this is. Like, think about that a little bit. Like, what does that do? What does it say about how I view photography and books and this idea of telling stories? Because I think that's a good thing about photo books. They can teach you something, not just about, somebody else's vision of the world. They can also teach you something about yourself, like what you believe in. Because otherwise it's really boring. And of course that's really important for the world of photojournalism, because photojournalism, good photojournalism wants to teach you something about the world so that you can become part of these people that change the world and make it a better place. I don't have to tell you, right? The coup in Turkey and the terrorist attack in Nice and all this stuff just in the past 2 days. This is not the book that does this, but But this is a different book. It really questions our belief, like what do we believe in and what do we think is true, and our view of the world. Like now we have the scientific view and we believe that's the only view and this is kind of cute or amazing. But at some stage, this is what humans believed in. This is what they took as like, we want to look at that. Before they had photo festivals, they had cave drawing festivals maybe, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So this is kind of important to keep this in perspective, because we think we know everything, and we have all these great gadgets that tell us the time and everything, but at some stage that's going to look silly maybe to other people in 1,000 years. So that's the idea, I think, of this book. Now, so having said that, I'm going to just skip ahead a little bit, because I don't really necessarily want to show you the whole book. I don't have the time for this. So then at the end, there's a section, I don't know whether you can see, this is printed on a different paper. I'm good. So this is printed on a different paper. You see this a lot in books, and this is a really nice thing. So this is sort of a glossary. And then this is an explanation of the book. And I personally really dislike when people do that. Don't explain your book to me, because that takes away all the fun. Because, maybe I get something different out of the book, and why would that not be right? Or maybe I just find this on my own, and finding it on my own is just so much more fun than getting it presented. So I don't really believe in explanations. Okay, so if we skip this, and you don't have the time to read anyway, and there's a set of captions in the end, and this is actually quite nice. So this is sort of a glossary of what all these things actually mean, where they come from, and what you're actually looking at. So at the end, you're not left to this mystery like, what is this? You can actually see, okay, this is what this is where this is coming from. Here's a picture, let's say this picture here is from 1807, some botanical garden. So this gives you an idea of like what these images actually are, and there's quite a bit of information, and that's the end of the book. So I thought as it's a little bit of a mystical book, a little bit of a magic, and they're not so much magic. It is not really a clear story, but it's a book that I found really engaging. And of course, that might be because I have this background as an astrophysicist, but on the other hand, I've seen so many of those pictures, they're really not that exciting for me any longer, because I look at them and I say, hey, that's Mars, that's this, right? So this is the first book I wanted to show you. This is by Carla Rack, Eises Ors. Okay, moving on. So this I have to make sure this is actually, you can actually see this. This is a book by Hiroshi Okamoto. It's called Recruit. And when you look at this, obviously this looks very, can you see this? Right? Yeah, this looks very different. Right? Oh, you can see, okay. If you have to tell me if it has a wrong spot. So it's very different, right? So books come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and everything, and you know this by now, but I just wanted to point this out. So this book looks really not even like a book. It looks like it basically is a folder. It comes with this rubber band, which at some stage is going to just fall apart. That's what they do. So it looks like a file folder. And then you see there's a picture here with a clip that's just, it looks like a, I don't know, if you look at this, it's in Japanese. You wouldn't really necessarily know, but you would assume it has something to do about this person. It's like that person's file. Right? So there's a very specific decision that was made about this book, which is interesting already, right? Okay, so then, but it has to make sense now. So let's see whether it makes sense. And then it says Recruit, that's the title. So then, okay, Recruit. So you have some idea of what this might be already, right? Not too much, but some idea. Okay, so let's keep going. So you can't really see this. This paper is fairly thin, and it's a nice paper, but it looks a little bit, if we look, it looks a little bit like it's printed maybe at home. Or the quality of the printing is not so great. But again, so first of all, it's a dummy, so that might be that. But also we're looking at this file here, right? And maybe in this file, some of the materials are just printed really quickly on an inkjet printer in your office, right? So it kind of, okay, I like this. Okay, so this is in Japanese, you can't really read it, but there's somebody's cell phone. And then you got a little text here. I want to die. Okay, it's a little dramatic, and then you turn the page, and then you see this. Okay, so you see, given this lines up nicely, but not quite so, but it's great. And then there's this here, and this is tipped in. Now this is really great, but if you wanted to produce this book commercially, this would get really expensive because somebody would have to do this by hand, right? So this is a great book, and I hope they will make it. But it's probably going to be pretty expensive to make. You'll see why, because there's a lot of these materials in here. And they will make a little bit more sense later. So you have to a little patience, and then you turn the page, and then you see this. Now the interesting thing for me here is, I don't know, is anybody here who can read Japanese? Good for them. I can't, but it's kind of really obvious what this is, right? Even though you cannot read the text, it's really obvious because we all know what this is, right? Passport pictures, and this is like how you pose for a picture, which might come in handy because downstairs they're taking pictures, right? And then you have these things, you always have to go to the passport office and they change the rules, and you have to look like this and not like this, and chin up and all this stuff, and glasses off or on, So this is kind of like, with just a few pictures, we all know what that is, even though we cannot read the text. Or we can read good. Good. Okay. All right. It's good to smile, I guess. Okay. And then you go here, and this is what I would call archival materials. Again, it's kind of clear what this is, even though you can't read it. Right? How do you tie your knot, right, of your tie? How do you dress? If you're it's clear as Japanese, there's this idea of the salaryman, or these, like, we'll see a lot more of those, these office drones. So somehow it has to do with, like, picture taking, tying something, recruit. Okay, so somebody is getting a job, right? Without any text, just with pictures, we're getting there now. And then here we go, right? I don't know what this is, but it looks, again, like there's like a price tag here. And then here is our recruit. This is a different paper. So this is slightly glossy paper. It feels really slick. And then this is this, let's call it printer paper. That's a stupid name, but anyway. So it's, a little thin. So we want to assume this is our recruit here, okay? And then you turn the page. And then you have this landscape, and you have your boarding passes, and everybody knows what that is. So yeah, okay. So this thing, okay, that person got pictures taken and everything, and now they're going somewhere to get a job, right? It's that simple, right? And they're going here. And what is this? I don't know, but it looks like Tokyo, right? So this makes a lot of sense. And then there's an insert here. This is in Japanese. But the nice thing about this book is when you lift this up, the text underneath is in English, so it gives you a chance to read the text. It's a very, really smart way of working with this. So it preserves the character of this book, and at the same time, it helps non-Japanese people to read it, which is, I think, really nice, a really nice solution. The English is a little rickety here and there, but that needn't concern us. Okay, and by now you know the strategy of the book, right? So nothing else is going to be introduced, and then we can keep going through the book. So, okay, we have to remember these things, right? There was something about tying a knot, like getting dressed, and so these guys, are getting dressed, which is kind of nice. So you start making connections in the book, and the viewer knows, like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. This is, I understand what's going on. And then here's the tie again, and then this mixes it up a little bit. If you look carefully, this is the guy, and here is with presumably his girlfriend. He's getting a job, and there he is leaving the house, right? And then he goes to Tokyo. Maybe, I don't know, right? And then he goes to the place where you go when you want to get a job. Right? There's no text. You don't need any text to tell that story. Right? It's very, very clear. And you stand in line, and everybody looks the same, and it's kind of really depressing. I don't know. I mean, I find this really depressing, right? But so I've actually, I know of this, like, office culture, the business culture, the salary man, but I actually never seen a book about this before, a photo book. And I think this is one of the reasons why I find this really interesting, because it uses the form and it tries to tell me something about all these people where I think, oh, they're just overworked drones. But they're all individuals, and they're trying to get the job and move to the big city and have their life. So it tells me something about that culture. And that culture has been going on for quite some time, so here's something that's a little older. Again, the salary man. Notice how they all have the identical briefcases, apparently. And it's this thing, right? Everybody wants the job, because if you get that job, then you're this heroic guy. And I have no idea what this says, but apparently he's doing something great. And it really helps that this guy looks a little bit like our main character, right? That's kind of nice, and they're all heroic here, because having a job is great. Okay, I don't know what this says, doesn't matter. And then we're back. Here's our main character walking around, and then here's text, and underneath you see this is a Gmail, and it's translated. So this is an email from a recruiting office from some corporation, and it talks about how they got in touch with him and how he responded to them. So you get a little bit of this correspondence between this young man and the people that are possibly giving him a job or they're not giving him a job. So he puts some stuff away in a locker, and then breaks it up. There's always these breaks in between, so the story is like weaving in and out, because it also is about these ideas that you might have if you want to get a job. There's the uncertainty of what's going on. It's getting tiring and everything. Here's some text. I don't know what this says. I read this before. I can't remember. The uncertainty, you're alone in this big world. I don't know if you have. I share, like, one of my previous incarnations. That's actually kind of what I did, walking around with a suit in a place like that and looking for a job. So I don't know. Maybe that's why I like this book. And then in the center, this close up of this man. This is like, and you kind of feel what's going on here. This dreadful uncertainty, you know, you have to conform to these rules, and, you know, in this big city. So even though it is about Japan, it might apply if you look for a job anywhere with this kind of environment, you know, in a suit and tie. You know, there's a lot of boring office jobs, and you have to dress up and follow conventions. And I mean, I think I want to say, here's another email. In the world of art, we're a little lucky that we don't have to do that, and we have a different dress code, right? If you walk around, you'll clearly see like the photojournalistic dress code. It's different. But you don't have these kinds of pressures. So there's other pressures. Lindsay Adario is going to give a talk later where she's going to talk from her perspective about exactly that. So I think that's at 4 today. Anyway, back to the book. So by now you know how this works, right? With the materials. So here's a letter of job offer, right? So he got a job. This is what this looks like here with a seal. And it doesn't really quite end there. You know, it goes back to his private life a little bit. You know, so he got his job and he goes home and he starts thinking about, is this really what I want to do with my life? Is this the kind of job that I want? You know, and I was so happy once, and now I'm not happy any longer. Or maybe not, I don't know. Anyway, so it makes it a little bit more personal. It goes into some personal aspects of this person's life. So he is not this really anonymous person, but he has a real life. This is, you know, Japanese pension service. You get signed up for Social Security because you have a job. And then you travel to work, right? And then at some stage she gets in touch. I'm just gonna gets in touch with somebody else, trying to look for a new job, a different job. So here he is at his job. So he wasn't really that happy. So he looks for a different job and he finds it. And this is basically the outline of this book. Again, so here are these materials. You know, all this strange, I mean, I find this culture very strange. Not the Japanese culture, but this like office culture, you know, this conformity and, you know, this repetition here of these forms, and you as a human being are supposed to conform to all of that. I mean, we have that all the time, whether we want to get a passport or we have to talk to the, I don't know, the insurance agent, all this stuff. We're made to conform to all these things. We're being pressed into these patterns that might or might not appeal to us. So this book is not just about, I think, getting a job in Japan. It's also about the kind of pressures that we have in our lives. What do we have to do? How do we fit in? Are we happy with our jobs? What do we want to do with our lives? So it goes beyond just that story. So this is the young man getting his job is Yotishino. And it says, job hunting is just like a game between 500,000 students and 4.2 million companies in Japan. Every student has their own story. This is just one story amongst many. This is my story. And then this is what we call the colophon of the book. And so that's the book, right? So it's this very, very, I mean, I think a very, very nice object about something I've not seen this in this form before. It's very well put together. It speaks about something very specific, but I do think it also speaks about something that, you know, a lot of us have some relationship with, you know, whatever it is, like going to the university, getting a job, applying for this, going to the passport office, whatever it is, whenever you're pressed into this role and you have to sort of do this, even like traveling, right? You stand in line after you get your boarding pass, and then you're being treated like cattle for 8 hours, you know? So it's like this modern world. Okay, so that's that. See, I also want to say, at the end, if you have questions, please ask questions. Okay, so moving on, let's see. So this is a book called Baltica, as is kind of obvious from the cover, and it's by Yulia Tichomirova. So when you look at this, this looks and feels hand-bound, and the reason why I'm saying that is because, maybe you can see this, it shifts a little, like it's a little loose. I don't mind this because this is just what happens. Unless you're a really good binder, it just gets a little loose. For a dummy, I kind of like that somebody actually learned how to do that, and you can make this at home. This is kind of charming for me. I mean, as a book, if this were a book from a publisher, I'd say, oh, this is a piece of shit, right? But as a dummy, I really like this. You know, it has this charm to it, and it's you know, it's nicely made. And you know, this is actually not that, I mean, it's actually kind of simple to do, but it's really hard to do it well. There are a lot of YouTube videos that can show you how to do this. You buy the supplies, and then you do it, and the first time you do it, it doesn't look like this. The first time you do it, it looks like a bunch of pages that might or might not belong together. Anyway, so Baltica. So it's hand bound. Okay, so there's a title page. This is just the book board here. So this board here, I don't know if this is in focus, but that's the kind of board that's underneath the cloth here, right? So this is basically just untreated. And so there's the title page, and then it starts with a picture. So this is again a very different book now, right? So this is already very different than the first two books. Here's a photograph. So you see black and white and color pictures, and that might or might not mean something. Okay. And it changes the placement of the pictures a little bit, which is kind of nice. So you see, like, this is called full bleed, without any borders. A lot of full bleed pictures in this book. And the good thing about this kind of binding is, if you do it like this, the book lies completely flat. So you can actually see every picture, everything that's here, and this is called the gutter in English. And then here you have a little text. And for those people who want text, yay, text, it doesn't really say you that much, so that's great. I love it when photographers do that. They give you text, but it's not really that clear, but you're made to think something. Okay. And then this is what I meant by the binding is a little loose, but I don't mind that. It's kind of charming. The final book, if this is done by a machine, it's going to be tight and it's going to work. It's going to open just as well, but it's not going to look like this. But, for handmade, I really like this. And it has this, a specific atmosphere to these pictures too, the way that they're photographed. There's a certain feel to them. There's like a looseness to them, maybe a little bit, you see how this is a little loose actually. Maybe it's something about age. Everybody's really young, carefree, having fun. Clearly it's getting more and more specific with these black and white photographs. Now here they're having certainly fun with something. And then here you see it's a concert. So it's about becoming more and more specific. So it's about young people. There's concerts, there seems to be a lot of energy, so maybe hardcore punk rock. And then these color pictures that talk about something different that adds to that. So we don't really know yet what that is, but clearly we're being led to believe that there is a relationship. So something is going on, right? And now it's clear. So it's starting out slowly with the black and white pictures, and then it brings you to these concert photographs. And people hanging out, and and again, there's this contrast between the color and the black and white, these different pictures, which I don't know. I mean, you can make formal comparison, like even if you think about like there's a fire here and there's a cigarette that's burning, right? You can make all kinds of connections. They're not just randomly placed. And then these dreamy, larger, so it's about dreams. It's about something very specific, like a scene where people hang out. The story is really not that obvious if we want to call it a story, but let's call it a story, but it's clearly about something. And, the kind of people it is about, these are the kind of people, and they might go to, the concerts and everything. And then, to me, this looks like St. Petersburg in Russia, right? So that places it, I don't know whether that's true, but that places it in this context. Okay, so something about punk rock, young people, St. Petersburg. It makes it a little, so the book actually is getting more specific, even though there's no text. Just looking at the pictures gives us this information. And so again, concert. And then here's the Cortona frames, right? I forgot to put Cortona on the move around the frames there. And again, the landscape, the color pictures. So you see, so at this stage, the book doesn't change that much. It keeps going, and it holds you in this mood. And you kind of, I don't know about you, but I was really curious, like, what's going on here? Because somehow something didn't feel right about this. But something felt a little sad, a little rough, but in a nice way. But there was also something going on that didn't really quite, I didn't know what that was. It's not, it's not just, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's not just a book about, like a zine about punk rock, right? You probably have seen those, which is kind of cool. 10 pictures of people headbanging and playing music. This is very different, right? So it adds something else to that. Context, and, these people that, have their lives, and who knows what's going on. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit faster. Right, so there's an insert. Of course, I said small pages, right? I don't know why this is small. Maybe it's small because it has some nudity in it, but anyway, so this is what this is. You see the quality, you can guess that these are all older pictures, especially with the, like that digital grain here. This is quite nice. I don't know whether you really need this small insert, but that's okay. I mean, it's a nice break. I might have put the break, this is really nice. I might have put it a little earlier. Somebody once told me that 2/3 into the book you have to do something, so somebody like a photo book, so people get a little jolted or like, whoop, wake up, you're gonna keep looking. It's true though, right? So 2/3 into the book, when people know I know what this is, and you have to do a little bit something that gets them excited again. So this is a little late, but anyway. So let's go through, because I wanted to show you, it's quite nice, right? Spread. So it ends on this really sad note, kind of. And then here's text, and it says, Baltica is dedicated to Timur and to all my friends from Russian punk hardcore community. Timur Kakhareva was our dear friend, talented musician and anti-fascist activist. He was stabbed to death at the age of 20 by members of a right nationalist group in St. Petersburg. Timur will stay in our hearts forever. So it's suddenly it's like, boom, right? Ooh, okay. Right, so this feeling of, you know, excitement and sadness and hardcore and punk, suddenly it all makes, I mean, it made sense before, now it becomes very specific. But when you look at the book again, it's a book about Timur in a sense, but it's a lot more. It's not just the story, not that there's anything wrong with the story, it's a lot more. It's really a lot of feelings, the sadness, something was taken from us. This was so exciting, and now something is profoundly wrong. So I thought this was a worthy candidate for the top 5. Again, the photographer is Yulia Tikhomirova, who I think now lives in Italy. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so another Italian in the shortlist here, Francesco Amorosino, and it's called Il Libro del Comando. And my Italian is really lousy, I apologize. So doesn't really give you that much information. This is what's on the back. There's nothing on the spine. And then you open this book. So this looks like a commercially produced book. And you turn the page, and then you get this, right? I mean, well, you see, I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to just show you a few pages first so that you get a first impression. This is all black. Okay. So the first thing you see is there's a lot of darkness in this book. Everything is black, there's not a white page at all. And the pictures are all in this greenish tinted black and white. You know, so it's like a green and white if you want. And then when you keep going through this book, there's no text, well, until the end. So there's a lot of symbolism going on, or something that looks symbolic, that might be a symbol for something. Even if it's not, if it's just a path, but somehow in this context, everything becomes symbolic and a little uncanny, maybe a little Blair Witch Project. I don't know whether you know that movie, you know, there's something really creepy going on here. I don't know what that is, but if that's happening in the book, that already has me interested, because I like a good creepiness. Let's see what this does. You know, it's like, you know, creepy mystery. I like a good mystery. I don't know about you, but, you know, it's something, right? It's a little, I don't know, uncomfortable maybe. That's good, right? If, as a photographer, if you can make people uncomfortable with your book, that's always good, right? Because then they feel something. You want people to feel something with your photographs, whatever it is. Even if somebody gets really angry at you, I think that's great, you know? Because you made somebody angry and they disagree with you, well, ask them, well, hey, why are you so angry? You don't like seeing these pictures of these people? Imagine you were in their shoes. Anyway, so a lot of these pictures are kind of abstract, not very descriptive, but it's not just that. It's not formal exercises or look at these pretty abstract pictures. They're kind of like, you want to understand, like, what is this? Like every picture, like, wait, this has to mean something. What is this? So there's a tree here, and then you look carefully, and then this looks like a snake. Okay, all right. Snakes and trees, and there's a handprint here. You can see that, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then here's the palm, right? So there's a handprint. And lights, and then there's these guys here on the ruins. So there's like religious symbols and stuff coming in, and the light is shining through. Everything somehow in this book feels like it has a lot of meaning, even if it doesn't. Like a spider web suddenly is really important, which is, you know, great. If you're a photographer and you can make people believe that something really, really not important is super important, that's great. You know, then you've done an interesting job. And somehow, yeah, I don't know what this is. It starts to feel a little medieval, or maybe more than a little medieval, a little scary. Okay, here's a black page. That might mean something, right? Right. So see that this is like sort of like a kind of not an end, but you have a little break, so you don't have the direct connection. And then you go here, and oh, okay, there's a little sun there. And then there's that. So I don't know how you feel about this book, but I quite like this. I mean, clearly it's not a very clear story, right? You know, it's not very specific for me anyway, but it works because, you know, it makes sense. You turn the pages. I actually want to turn, I don't know about you, I mean, you can't do it anyway because I have the book, but I actually want to turn the pages and see the next thing, which is great, right? If you can make a book like that, that's always good. See how you make the connection here. There's your, this is actually quite interesting, right? So you have the statue of the dog here, and then you have a dog or something that looks like a hunting animal here, and then you have cows or sheep here, young cows, right? So animals hunting, hunted animals, and then you have, boom, the animals, you know, it's a little story, right? Just right there. Even though in reality it isn't, but it makes these visual connections between pictures. And you believe like, oh, this is about animals attacking each other, wild animals. And then, of course, here it isn't any longer, but there's something going on. And, you know, manuscript, medieval. So clearly, this looks like an eye of a horse, maybe, something. But, you know, in this way, it doesn't really look like an eye of a horse any longer. It looks like an eye of a monster or something. And then, okay, so here's like rituals, right? A hand doing something with that water. And, you know, here's the washing. Somebody's washing their face. And then these human figures that can't be made out. And the light, it's always the light, you know. So it works, the photographs work with this kind of light, which is very, you know, it's kind of spotty in a sense, that like there's a spotlight on certain things that really relies on, you know, the darkness of the pictures. And then we get back to religion, right? So there's something about religion, symbolism, rituals, something that's scary, creepy, you know. I don't want to say anything offensive in Italy, so, you know, but religion is a little creepy to me, so that works. Let's see, so I'm going to keep going, I think. So I don't know what you think about this book. It's different when you look at it in person. The one thing I want to say about this book is I quite like it. The one thing I really don't like is the paper and the way the ink feels on the paper. You touch the page and it feels like it's touching plastic. That's the one thing that somehow needs to be changed in the book, I think. If it's a little, something has to be, it has to be a different paper, so that when you touch it, it should feel more like something that's organic, you know, when you really, because it is all about like these weird woods and animals and creatures and symbolism and medieval, so it shouldn't feel like commercially plastic, you know what I'm saying? But that's really the only problem I have with the book. Well, I actually have another problem at the book. I'll show you in a second, and you will not be surprised when you hear what my problem is. So that's it. And then this is, oops, not quite, so there's that. And then there is a title page, this is the last picture. And then there's where is it? Son of a gun. Okay, so the title page comes at the end, which I've seen in books before. I think this works. I mean, I don't read Italian, so for you as the Italians in the audience, this might be different. If I had seen this in the beginning, and I kind of, because this kind of talks a little bit about what's in the book, if I see that at the end, I kind of like that. Now, what I don't like, though, is that the photographer couldn't resist to put an explanation into the book at the end, like, this is what this is. And I was like, oh, why? So I don't really need this, because this is all nice and cute and all, but there's so much more for me in the book than just that. You know, it's based on some story. I don't even want to tell you the story because you're not going to have a chance to read that thing. So, you know, it's telling this really strange story just with pictures. Everything is really black. You can see, you know, very dark, very mystical, very creepy. And you don't really know what's going on, but it's kind of engrossing. You just want to look at this whole thing. And I actually wanted to look at it I looked at it several times, like, well, this is kind of great. Wait, what did I just look at? What is this telling me? So it's this thing that doesn't really tell you anything, but you still want to look at it again, which is like the complete opposite of photojournalism, right? Which tells you a lot, and a lot of people just don't want to look at it again because they don't want to be confronted with this sadness again. It's like the complete opposite, right? But it works really well, I think. It's a really fascinating book. So this is called Il Libro del Comando by Francesco Amorosino. And now, because there has to be a winner, right? Not everybody is a winner. Only one person can be the winner. So this is the winning book. It's called Dear Japanese. This is a book by Miyuki Okuyama. And this is, I have to say, this is like an incredibly charming book. It's handmade. It holds together a little bit better than the other one, but it's still a little loose. And then you have this on the back. And it's just like holding it and looking at it, it's just the most amazing object because it's really delicate, it's really well done, it has a lot of, I hope you'll see in the projection, has a lot of soul to it. So there's like, this opens up, this cardboard, so this is just a double cardboard cover, and instead of just gluing it together, there's a picture in here, which is quite nice. And then you see the binding is a little loose, but that's okay. And then so this starts working with a little text. So it says, diaspora, a group of people who live outside the area in which they had lived for a long time and in which their ancestors lived. And then you turn the page, and here's a title page, Dear Japanese. And I don't know how many of you can read Dutch. Probably not that many, but this is like you would get photographs from a photo studio in Holland. It's just sort of a cover of an envelope. And then here's a little bit more text. So that's on this side, it says motherland, the country of one's birth, one's native land. And then this is in Dutch, fatherland. And it's the definition of what fatherland is. So you either have motherland or fatherland. So it's something about diaspora and about motherland and home, right? And then that's it. And then you turn the page, and then you see this. And I don't know about you, but to me this doesn't look very Japanese. But we already had Dutch text, so this looks really Dutch. Okay, so something about Holland, right? And then you have these stamps. You notice that there's a different paper. So there's actually 3 types of paper used in this book. There's this white paper, there's this brownish paper, and then there's another white paper that you'll see in a little while. So these are just stamps. So you basically, in the beginning of the book, you establish the location. You establish sort of what this is. And then you have, okay, this looks like Amsterdam, Holland, or Netherlands. And then this doesn't look like Netherlands. This clearly is, I don't know what this is, right? But these archival photographs, and these people don't really look very Dutch. So, okay, what's this? This could be a mistake, or it could be part of the story, right? Let's assume it's not a mistake. So this book does this a lot. It sort of jumps back between these different things. And I think what's exciting, and I think I can convince you by showing you this book, is that it does it so well that the story is really quite amazing. And you become more and more involved in the story. And you actually kind of know what the story is before, at the end, you get some explanation, which in this case actually works. And I'll talk about this later. So here's a map. But the names on the map are not Japanese. Well, most of them are not anyway, so that's kind of interesting. So there's something else going on, right? There's this Japanese thing, something East Asian, and Netherlands. So the story, whatever the story is going to be fairly complex. Okay, and then there's a change up here. So you notice there's this landscape, and then it's done quite nicely, right? So if you see it in the projection, right, and then but you can turn the smaller page, and you open it up, and here's a portrait. So this is the 3rd type of paper. So there are these inserts, and these people, she looks somewhat East Asian, he plus 2, so there's these photographs that are kind of clearly photographed in Holland, or maybe I'm saying that because I've been there too many times, but the people don't look very Dutch. Right? And then you turn the page again, see how nicely this is done. It's really quite nice, very meticulous to get this done in such a nice way that it lines up. Hand binding, this is actually really, really tough to do. Okay, you're in Holland. So what's this all about? This is very strange, so let's see. Okay, so this is something different. So you get more and more aspects of the story. So here's this now. This is not a photograph, it's a drawing, but it's fairly specific drawing of these paratroopers. And then you have 1945, and we all know what that is. Okay, so now, World War II, right? The end of World War II now. Okay, here's Holland, 1945. Okay. Ships. Okay, so ships, what do you use ships for? Well, I guess you'll travel. And then this makes the connection to, we had photographs like this earlier, archival photographs from sort of the same background. So somehow this all has to make sense. And it does, because you will be told more and more. And then we've seen this before, this idea, so now it repeats this. And now you're familiar with this idea, so these people, East Asian people living in Holland, again, with this nice way of binding it together. And then this is an old photograph of the Japanese emperor. And then this is Dutch that says safe travels. And then prince and princess, I don't know who these are, but clearly, right, this is probably the crest, so clearly it's something Japanese. And then 815, the end of World War II. Now, get this, how nicely this is done. If you turn this up, you see the photograph, right? So the photograph is sort of cut in half. Very nice. Very, really smart decision, and bound so nicely that, it lines up really well. Very, very well done. Job really well done. Okay, so World War II, Japanese, the Dutch, and then something in East Asia. And you might know the Dutch had a colony in Indonesia, right? So, and okay, the Japanese invaded. So there has to be something going on around that whole theme. And then some people somehow ended up in Holland and they look East Asian, right? Okay, so there is some connection. Let's see what else it tells us. Oh, okay, so here's a trip now. So this is like a road, not a road trip, ship traveling. And this is, looks like Imperial Japan at some stage. Korea is occupied. And yeah, clearly people are traveling because, there's a suitcase and somebody might have taken that teddy bear. And then you go back and you see more. But now you see this picture, and this is a picture of, a picture of a picture. And here's a Dutch person and somebody who looks a little Asian, and they have a child. So there is something going on. Somebody might have come to Holland and have had children there. Okay, there's this. And then these ruins here, or whatever this is, this debris. Holland again. Tree. I don't know what this says in Japanese. Okay, and then this drawing, some text. So it really stays with this moment. It does this, these portraits one more time. It might be maybe a little bit long, this book. It could be cut it a little shorter, but that's okay, right? And if you can read Dutch, you see that these two, there's a Dutch caption under this picture, right? So it's connection. And then this is a Japanese soldier. So you can surmise that, the Japanese soldiers have something to do, and then some people had to leave. And then, you can just, Sumatra is in Indonesia, right? So that makes it very specific. So Indonesia, Dutch colony, occupied by the Japanese. At the end of the war, some people had to leave. Who might they be? Of course, the Japanese had to leave, but who ended up in Holland, right? Probably not the people from the colonies, because why would they go to Holland? Somebody else. And then there's, this is actually quite nice here. This is a dangerous terrain in Dutch. And then the final picture. And then, so you get this idea of like people being displaced and some history. And then this is telling you the sort of the backstory. It's about home, the book, but it is very specifically about the children of Japanese soldiers who had kids with Indonesian women. And at the end of World War II, they were seen as occupiers, so they had to leave Indonesia, and they went to Holland, which was the colonial home of Indonesia at that time. And so the story is a little longer, but the short story is that these people with mixed Japanese Indonesian background live in Holland and are trying to find their ancestry. Like, where do I actually belong? What's my home? What connection do I have to Japan? What's my connection to Indonesia? And then, of course, what is my connection to this country that I live in? So this is basically the story of the book here. And this is the book, and I think it's, this is very nice. A very, very nice treatment of the story, of telling the story with the form of the photo book. And I hope I convince you that it actually does tell the story. The large part of the story is in the photographs. Maybe not the details of like some of these things, but you get a very specific feeling out of these people, of what you're looking at, this idea of home, connecting different countries and trying to come to terms with what's going on in different countries, and then, you know, yeah, where are you coming from? You know, especially if you are from a very different background. I mean, I'm German, I'm in Italy, so it's all European, right? It's sort of very similar, but your background is very different and you have this very different biography, then of course the story gets a lot more loaded. And I think this book does a very, very good way of telling that story, and I think it does it in a very, very convincing way. And this is not to say that these books are not good, but I think, I don't know, your mileage might vary, but for me this clearly is the best book out of these 5, and it deserves to be published. Okay, so we have a little time for questions or comments if you want to ask questions, because I'm sort of at the end of the presentation. You have any questions in general about any of these books, or about photo books, or, well, whatever else? Yeah. The value of the cover of a book in general, or for these? Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, if you go to a publisher, what's going to happen probably is they'll tell you we need a different cover because we can't sell this book. You know, you're like, I really like this picture, and I say, no, this can't be on the cover. Nobody's going to buy that book. We have to put this picture on the cover because people love pictures of kids, or what, you know, what. They know this because they sell books. Publishers sell books. The publishers that don't sell books are out of business, right? So if you're a photographer, if you work with a publisher, don't think these people just want to pester you or annoy you when they want something changed. They do that because they know what they can sell and they have a lot of experience. So the cover for me, of course, is important because, you know, just like you, I walk around and then there's 500, no, not 500, but like 50 books on sale. And what you look at, you first go to like, this looks cool, right? So I think for all of these books, actually, I don't know. I mean, the way this is done, this is perfect for me, you know, because this is so weird on the cover. I'm really interested because it looks like a notebook. And dear Japanese, what does that even mean? You know, there's no picture on the cover. I don't think any of these pictures will work for me on the cover. This is just great. It looks like, you know, these notebooks that you can buy, and on the back cover, this is just, you know, it works really well. It sums up so much of what's in the book. This works for me too. Oh, now I'm going to confuse you here. This works for me too, even though I wish I had like a name on, you know, on the spine, but because it is kind of like, it's not one of those space pictures, but it is a picture. And I like, you know, if this were just like this, right, imagine that's the book, I wouldn't look at this, right? Even if there were text on it, that's really boring. So you have to do something to make this interesting. Adding a picture, and if you put a space picture on it, everybody thinks, oh yeah, it's another astronomy book, right? So that's why this is probably not on there. This works. This is, I think, perfect. I mean, it's not a super attractive cover, but if I saw this at a photo book shop, I'd look at it. It's like, what the hell is this? This looks so interesting. I have seen that before. Why would I buy a book that, especially with the if you could do this with a picture here, that's just clipped on, perfect. It just works. Let's see. So then this, that's okay. Would I look at this book right away in a bookshop? No. Or am I? You know, when I go to book fairs, I usually go like 3 or 4 times, and then with time, every time I look at different books because the ones that I like, oh, this is a cool cover. Those are already gone. Like second time, I look at the ones like, do I know any names? And the third time, it's like, all right, what am I going to look at now? Oh, okay, well, let's look at this. I think this could have a better cover. It's good. I mean, I don't like the treatment of the type here on top of this. I don't know. I mean, your mileage might vary. Do we have actual designers in the room here? Anybody is a graphic designer? No? But I think this could be better. I mean, you know, this book needs, I think in terms of the type treatment, it needs work. But, you know, it's not terrible. But, you know, this is not really super attractive. But I don't know. This might be a good cover picture, but something here isn't really working. And then this is okay. I think this is a little boring for what's in the book. I would like to see something that's a little bit more interesting on the cover, because if I saw this from a distance, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I'm gonna look at that book, right? And then maybe somebody would say, hey, look at this. This is really interesting. So this on the back is okay, but on the cover, in the front, it needs something that's a little bit more exciting for me. I don't know about you, but I don't know how many of you, if you saw this book downstairs, you would say, hey, I want to look at that book. right? Because, it's like, so you have to think about the cover really carefully, and, I mean, imagine you put, I don't know, there's all these weird symbols in here, right? You're going to put something more interesting on the cover. I don't know what it is. Even if you take something from here, I don't know, and put that on the cover, I don't know. So the covers are really important. I think when I rate books, they're included in what I call concept, because you have to have a good cover. And if that doesn't work, then it's like, yeah, this is nice, but the cover is really kind of shitty, and it should have a better cover. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And you can always check. I mean, if you have a dummy that doesn't work, you can always someone helps you to change it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, you should. You should get input, and then people will tell you, well, this is a really nice book, but you should change this and this and this and this. And then ideally you'll do it. And then, of course, some photographers don't want to do it because they know better, and that's often a problem. I mean, it might become a problem because the publisher might just say, hey, we're not going to do your book. Sorry, if you're too difficult. I mean, for the photographers in the audience, if you want to get a book published with a publisher, don't be difficult. That's the first rule. The second rule is be prepared to make compromises, because publishers know a lot of things about photobook publishers, and you want to use their expertise. It would be completely crazy. It's like going to the doctor. They give you a diagnosis, and you're like, I don't care. I'm not going to take those pills. I know better. Right? I mean, you can do that. Some people in the US do that, but they don't do so well. Please.
Sorry, in the meaning of the rhythm,
Yeah.
when you read a book from the first page to the end, what do you think about the white pages on the right hand? Do you think it's a stop in the rhythm?
It can be. So when you think about a book, I mean, we all grew up reading Western-style books, so we always start on the right-hand page, right? So the left page is, I don't know, is there a good example here? I mean, actually, no, this is a bad example. This book is not so easy to look at. But, yeah, so it really matters where the picture is, right? So this is what we're used to, right? You open a book, and then there's a picture on that side. Now, so, and our eye naturally goes to that page, because that's how we read books, right? So if something is on the left, that's kind of not natural, but the thing, when you do this as a bookmaker, you force people to look at an area where they wouldn't necessarily look at the first thing. They look there, and then there. So you can make people pay attention that way, but it has to make sense. But it's a good way to make people pay attention, and it kind of, if you had a blank page here, you can use it as a break too. You think it's important to have sometimes? It can be, yes, it can be for a book. There's not. Right, so if you have the book The Americans by Robert Frank, or American Photographs, of course there's a blank page picture, works perfectly well. But for some books, shifting pictures left and right can make a big difference, because people suddenly, there's like you make people change the way to engage with the book. And that, as somebody, when you make a book, I mean, ultimately what you have to do, you're kind of like a movie director, where there's no sound, right? And people can take their own time, but you have to guide people through the book and help them see. But you also sometimes, in a horror movie, you have like scary moments and loud music and this kind of stuff. You have to use that in a book too, so that people don't get bored, or they can follow you. If something is more important, less important, you can play with expectations. Something gets really big, really small. Maybe the really important thing is really small, so that if you don't pay any attention, you don't get it, and you're like, wait, what is this? So you have to sort of think about this engagement. Yes. So making a photo book is all about engaging with an audience and creating. Ultimately, you want to create an experience for a viewer that kind of like what I did when I looked through this book. I don't know, for some of these books, you probably noticed how I was sort of engaged and excited, and this is kind of what you want to do. More questions? Well, if there are no questions, then thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.